Warren, hello.
How are you?
Yeah, this is our group, the TV Writers Studio, and I think a round of applause for the Golden Globes. I'm sorry. I was just thinking about our history, and I think we go back to 1980. So,
I think it was 1979, Norman.
all right, so it's 35 years, and my son was born in 1980,
Yep.
and he's now writing speeches for our UN ambassador. So
Well, that's an important job.
we're telling jokes. He's writing. He's saving the world. But it was. But we got you in lieu of Michael Keaton.
Hmm.
No, but he's going to come in and speak to us as well. So what's the temperature there?
It is ridiculously balmy. You could probably see over my shoulder that it's fairly gray, but it's 46 degrees, and that sucks for us. We're Fargo. We want it really cold, and we want lots of snow. But our first week of shooting is next week, and we're on stage. And right now we have what is known as a Chinook. And so that is a warming trend where everything's melting and it's slushy and it's just ugly instead of the magnificence that I need in order to shoot. But we'll get there.
So can you give us a little heads up on? I know it's a prequel, and I was thinking, what are you going to do with Keith Carradine? Because you've recast him. He's become younger.
Yes, indeed. And in fact, he has been reborn as Patrick Wilson.
Very.
So Patrick Wilson is the young Lou Salverson. And it's 1979. We're in Laverne, Minnesota. And, Patrick Lou has been over in Vietnam. And the madness of war, the insanity of what that was like, he feels he's left behind. And he comes back, and he dons a uniform, and he's married, and Molly is 4 or 5 years old. And his wife, Betsy, is in the picture. And so it really is, and we alluded to it in season 1, it is Lou's kind of trial by fire. It is the madness that he will actually face and have to confront, which is ultimately the massacre at Sioux Falls. And so it really becomes the story of a young couple, Peggy Bloomquist and Ed Bloomquist, and Peggy is played by Kirsten Dunst. Ed is Jesse Plemons, and she is a hairdresser. He is the assistant butcher in Laverne, and they get caught they really get caught in the middle of a small, old, local crime family, the Gerhardt family, and the Kansas City mob, and that's big business. They have powered up, they have no soul, and essentially this couple gets caught in between the war of those two factions.
Wow. Was that the mob that was wiped out in Fargo 1? In that great sequence out the exterior of the building? That's the same mob.
No, it actually isn't.
No.
It actually isn't. This is Kansas City, and these guys in 1979 really embrace what big business and powering up is all about. They are the corporate vision of American crime. And the Gerhardt family is, in fact, a family. But when, okay, now a little spoiler alert, I'm going to trust each and every one there with you Norman.
Okay.
So when Peggy is driving home from work one night, she, of course, is in a blizzard, and there's a moment where there's a distraction, and the next thing she knows, bam, she hits a young man who is crossing the road, and he becomes impaled into her windshield. That is ultimately Rye Gerhardt. And Kieran Culkin will be playing that role.
I think he's great. I know that Igby goes down.
Yes.
He's wonderful, wonderful in that.
Well, he will be impaled in the windshield. Peggy freaks out, gets out of the car, does a quick assessment, gets back in, drives home, pulls into the garage, gets out of the car, and makes dinner for Ed.
Okay.
And
sounds like Roald Dahl.
yeah, and
there is a film called that is up for best foreign film called Wild Things, and or Wild Times, and there's that scenario of a car pulling into a garage and there's a dent in the front, and you go from there.
yeah.
This is this entire group, I before they came in for their first meeting, I asked them all to watch Fargo, because I thought it was one of the. I love True Detective, and then you guys trumped it. But
Well,
I really thought I love, and they're in the midst of creating a pilot about it's set in 1933. It's a hard-boiled detective show, and this is so. As you're telling us, they're constructing a story, and they realize how difficult it is. And Noah Hawley did this all on his own. Is that?
Well, Noah Hawley? Noah Hawley is the only writer that I went to when I said, "Let's go do Fargo." And I just had it, having worked with Noah previously and read his fourth novel. My sense was Noah's mind was just twisted enough where that he would love the Coens, and when I asked, he said, "Are you kidding me? Of course." And I said, "Well, here's the next thing I want to do. I want to go back and re-examine the whole Fargo world and do that." And I think that probably the most inspired thought actually came from Steve Stark at MGM when he said, I'm not sure you need Marge to do Fargo." And so that creative freedom for Noah of, I'm going to create all new characters, I'm going to create a new story, but I'm going to live in a Fargo world, that was incredibly empowering for him. It gave him great freedom, and he said, so basically, I can be the third Cohen. And so Noah created those characters. He created a narrative. What we delivered to FX was hour one and a 15-page document that said where the rest of the 9 hours would go. From that, they said, let's do it. Let's go make it. The Coen brothers signed on as executive producers. They really...
Were they reluctant at first?
Pardon?
The Coens, were they reluctant to see this reimagined?
They were neither enthusiastic or reluctant, which is kind of how Joel and Ethan are in life anyway. They're like, yeah, okay, maybe. But they were actually on a flight when they were working out distribution on Llewyn Davis. They read the material, and they said, this is kind of haunting for us. we're not big fans of imitation, and yet we feel that Noah channeled us. We'd be proud to put our names on this. And so that stamp of approval was, I think, critical for us, because when we went out into the world and said, we're doing Fargo, most critics said, why? You know, that's a horrible idea.
Yeah.
But Noah had a vision. We brought in 4 writers that Noah and I had worked with before, and for the next 10 weeks, they broke in great detail all the rest of the 9 hours.
That's what we're doing right now. We're breaking 2 hours, and they've been here. They're getting a real impression of what it is to be on the staff of a show. They show up at 10 in the morning, and last night they were here till 8:30.
Yep.
So, and they eat lousy food, and so they're in television now.
That is life in a writer's room, and you embrace it. You love it. A lot of styrofoam and questionable food. But
Chinese food.
Yeah, exactly. What we did is we then delivered 10 weeks later 105 pages of outlines to the network in one single swoop. They said, we'll see you in a week, we'll serve lunch, and we're scheduling 3 hours. And so we came in, and we went into a boardroom, we sat down, there was food on the table. There may have been somewhere on that table a copy of the 105 pages of outlines. But no one ever picked up that document. No one ever went. In episode 4, we want to discuss what happens in the back half of that. Everything was about character. It was about setting the bar as high as we possibly could, and it was an incredible motivational session where they just said their notes were, we look forward to reading these scripts. And in that sense, they completely put all the pressure on us. They made us feel that the worst thing we could do would be to disappoint them. And they were wonderful partners in that way.
Wow. Yeah, it's a very brave network. I mean, I see it in the Americans as well, which I think which is done here in Brooklyn, by the way, and
yes,
is a terrific series. And you know, that's a wonderful network. That it's great to hear that, because now who was in the room? Noah and the other story breakers.
It was basically, this is a joint venture between MGM, FX Productions, and so myself, Noah, executives from the studio and network, small room, they served chicken sandwiches, and we were out of the room in less than 2 hours.
Wow.
And Noah's feet didn't touch the ground. I just looked at him and I said, how are you feeling? And he said, how do you not feel great? They read this material a number of times. Right. They really understand it. I think the most critical thing you look for in a broadcast partner is, are they doing the same show that you're doing? Or are you guys on completely divergent paths? And that happens, as you know, Norman, that happens a lot.
But you were sitting in that seat for years. Yeah, and you had to make those decisions. And when you get partners like this who understand, I did a series at Cinemax,
mm-hmm.
and it was a very sexual series, and I never got notes like that, but the notes were like, could we have another threesome in here? Those are the best notes I ever got. But this sounds like they read the material, they could see where it was going. And I mean, when you made a leap in the, I don't know what episode, and it was suddenly a year later.
Yes.
I was knocked back, and I thought that was a brilliant, brilliant leap. And they had a baby. It was wonderful.
The pan shot through the woods, and then just the Chiron 1 year later,
Yes.
because it's not very Cohen to go through like dating and romance and all of that kind of stuff, and so we knew that there was an attraction from the phone call that Colin makes when he calls Molly. You know, we're like, okay, we get it, and
but the audience knew. The audience said, "Come on, let's let's get them together." And
exactly.
they answered that. Yeah, I said, "Oh, okay, great. We don't have to go through the dating and did they sleep together." And that was really a wonderful leap because you gave them what they wanted. You gave them exactly what they wanted.
That's right, and then ultimately, now we were playing into the expectation that Molly, like Marge, is pregnant. There's still a incredible criminal at large, right. and the feeling is, all right, well, Molly's going to do what Marge did, and Molly's going to have a gun, and ultimately there's going to be a showdown, and maybe there'll be a wood chipper, maybe there won't. And we really went all the way back to that first hour where Colin Hanks has the confrontation with Malvo, with Billy Bob.
Right.
And Colin is a coward. He chooses being a parent as opposed to being a cop. But now what he's faced with is he knows that the woman he has married, the mother of his child-to-be, his daughter, his family will never be safe. His sense of family has been threatened. And so for us, rather than just have Molly go through the woods, this was the unfinished chapter for his character. And he had to face that. And so to us, we leaned into the expectation that we would be now following the track of the original film and hopefully presented something that was original, that was different, that was unexpected, and yet still satisfying. Because Marge, ultimately doesn't arrest. She doesn't make the final arrest with Bill in the movie. There's other cops who go to a motel and do that. And so we try to honor the past and create our own present.
We're dealing with a similar problem in this film noir adaptation we're doing. At the end of Chinatown, if you'll recall, Faye Dunaway was killed.
Yes.
And the really bad guy, the incestuous John Huston, lives on. And we're dealing with this now. We have a villain who was doing human experimentations in 1933. And should we kill him or should we let him go forth and think? And so we're dealing with that very problem. And there were probably some people who would have liked to have seen Malvo somewhere free and crazy.
Yeah.
What I really loved about that character was he's a practical joker. I mean, I love that he walks out of the post office and says to the guy mopping the floor, "You missed a spot."
Yeah.
Or he says, that woman in there, I would piss in her tank.
Yeah.
Does it and then calls up, "Hey, there's a guy pissing in your tank." I thought those were great great moments, and Billy Bob just ran away with it.
He nailed it. He nailed it. The interesting thing is that Malvo was never driven by money. He had his own moral code, and yes, he did jobs, you know, and we knew he would get those phone calls, but Malvo's motivation, it was interesting. Everyone, in a strange way, loved him, rooted for him. They respected who Malvo was.
Yeah.
And they enjoyed that. And Billy didn't want to know where it was going. So when we finally gave Billy the script, where he's in the cabin, Billy was like, "Now wait a second, that guy is taking me out?" And we said, "Well, you didn't think you were going to ride off into the sunset, did you?" And Billy was like, "Maybe." And we said, "No, we can't. We love you. We can't do that."
Okay.
But I guess my advice to you would be, as you guys are struggling with your character in television, a great adversary, a wonderful, wonderful bad guy. Boy, you want to have him live on as long as you can. I mean, there's just so much mind in the twists and turns, leaning into expectations, and then surprising the audience. And 2 hours, yeah, you know, we certainly killed a lot of people.
Yeah.
But when you have a wonderful adversary, and you're investing in building that character, you may want to think about at the end of your first season, maybe that's when you take them out.
Yeah.
And what's wonderful in a world of cable television, network television gives you a cliffhanger at the end of the season, and they go, "Ooh, maybe he's dead." In cable, he's dead.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think Malvo was running a race with Javier Bardem from No Country for Old Men. I mean, the
Yes.
two of them were just magnificent villains. I mean, they were as good as it gets. But Bardem walked away at the end of that film.
That's right.
Away, if you remember. And where did he go? So this is. I wanted to open it. There's a lot of questions here. Go ahead.
Hi.
Say your name.
My name is David Fine from Boston. I was just wondering, how, as a writer, how did your approach change after going through the experience of being a executive at a television network, or as a concept designer?
Well, I'm not a writer. I work with writers, and as a producer, what I try and do is find projects that I can bring to life and really put together a creative package. And the network experience was awesome. I loved it. But you have 100 balls in the air at any given moment. So the level of creative involvement when you've got that many balls is you're a firefighter, you're putting out fires, yes, no, and a lot of other people are handling things. Exciting, but the depth and the involvement of which you really can get into the material and really work with the writers is not nearly as satisfying as being a producer who finds a writer, helps them, guides them to the vision of what the project will be, and then fights to protect that vision. And to me, having 10 balls in the air instead of 100 is a really satisfying experience. I love that. And I think the greatest creative experience in my life has been doing Fargo. And all of a sudden, I got hot, and now I'm doing In the Heat of the Night for Showtime, an adaptation of that. And I think I have some bar kept very high kinds of development that I'm pursuing. But they're different muscles, and it's a deeper experience.
Hi, I'm
Your
Rebecca.
name. Tell me your name.
Rebecca, hi, very nice to meet you.
Hi, Rebecca.
Going into production, are all the episodes written, or are they developed more as you're still shooting?
We have, like last year, we have 10 hours that have been written, and we're working off of an outline for the final 2 hours. So we're really able to inform department heads and help our creative team here really make informed decisions about what is the journey, where are we going, what will happen, and hopefully, because we live in a world, we're in a cable world where it's a finite amount of dollars. I look at House of Cards and Game of Thrones, and I covet the money that they get to work with. But I think the more detail we can give as to where we're going with these characters in this story, the better decisions we can make, and that all comes out on the screen.
Can I ask one more real quick follow-up? What's your production schedule? Like, what kind of schedule are you guys on for shooting-wise?
We do blocks of 2 episodes, and first season we were 7.5 days per hour. This year we're at 8. So we shoot, and unlike network, our episodes run about 52 minutes, something like that. The opening hour and the closing hour last year were 65 minutes, and probably that's what they'll run. So we're doing a lot more content than you'd have in a network format. And they don't care what we do. We deliver an episode to FX, and they go, wow, this is great. How long does this run? And I go, 51:30. And they go, great. And that's it. It's whatever it is.
Are you using some of the same directors?
Yeah, we are using some of the same directors. Noah Hawley, our creator and our showrunner, will be directing for the very first time. He'll be directing our second hour, and Randall Einhorn, who also has a rich comedy background, will be doing the first hour. He'll come back for the third block. So 8 days per hour, we shoot in blocks of 2, and so that just is more efficient for us, more savings. And then at least one second unit that goes out per hour, at least a day of second unit as well. What we found is the world that we live in, we really, really wanted to make sure that was a character and a presence. And so we got a little carried away last year with the second unit, but we felt we needed it.
Yeah. Chris?
Hi, I'm Chris Cherry from Texas. You mentioned that meeting with FX and how it wasn't about script specifics, and it was about character, and it was a discussion about character and how great that was, and how it isn't always that way. Could you go into more detail about that, like what that conversation was like their character notes, like what was that like? Yeah.
Well, it's really interesting in a Cohen world, and in the world that we play in Fargo, in Minnesota, in the Dakotas, the brutal winters. So you have this, we call it Minnesota nice, where everyone is saying surface, small, non-emotional comments about the weather and the day, and their shoe needs to be repaired, and so you've got life and death situations in story, but in order to represent the world we're in and the dialogue, everything is very non-emotional and just kind of chit-chat. So you're living in that Minnesota nice, and then you want these truly dramatic life and death changing situations to be upon those characters. And so juggling that so that we're not saying what we're seeing, but we're seeing what we're seeing, to make that. And hey, it's a world where you put on layers of shields and armor just to go out and function, just to start the car every day. And so we wanted to be true to that. And yet, there was a desire to have a better sense of who is Molly. Into this world, the moral center of this world was Molly. Molly was the rooting factor. And yet, she's one of 4 lead characters. So there was a natural desire for them to say, well, you know, where is her mother? And what happened to her mother? And tell us this and tell us that. And it was a brilliant creative relationship with FX, but our sense was make them wait. The audience will wait. We have enough coming at them. Vern, we're able to explore who Vern was and see his wife and that she's pregnant. And the expectation in hour 1 is that that's the lead. That's the guy who's going to take us through the entire journey of Fargo until he did. And Molly had to work, and Colin Hanks gets 1 scene in the first hour. That's it. And so once you take the lead and accept the mystery of the journey, then character is slowly revealed, and I think now we will answer, well, what happened to Molly's mom? Because we didn't. And so it's just it's a mindset that we use and go into, and that was a bit of a discussion, but ultimately there was a lot of agreement. So hopefully that answers your question a bit.
Thank you.
Next. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
I can't see you, Stephanie. Lean in. There you go. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, nice to meet you. Stephanie Luschek. So what sorts of things do you typically look for in a show that's being pitched to you? Are there certain things in particular that make you more passionate about a project?
Yeah, that's a great question. Ultimately, what is it about? And when we went in and first said to FX and to MGM, we want the title, we want Fargo. What Noah articulated was, this is about the best of America up against the worst of America. And he was always true to that thematic. And at a lot of pitches make jumps and all kinds of detail, and yet it's what's never clear in a bad pitch is, for the writer, what is this really about, and why now, and why you? Why are you the unique being on this planet to tell the story? Why is this important to you? And so it's been my experience that, and there's tremendous creative freedom in the world we live in television now. You know, there used to be all kinds of taboos back in the day when Norman and I were doing network stuff, of like, you'd never do it. Well, there are no rules. You can do anything. But what is it about? What do you want to say? And a buyer today will absolutely embrace that. So when I went and rescreened on a very, very cold night in Calgary, I rescreened a 47-year-old MGM feature called In the Heat of the Night. And given what's going on all across America today, unfortunately, the issues of race and inequality and how we deal with that in this country is more relevant today than it was 47 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that's a powerful, powerful way to go in and basically say into the marketplace, we want to examine race in America today, and we're going to use this 5-time Academy Award-winning motion picture with an Oscar-winning writer-director to tell that story. And so I did that with Tate Taylor, who did The Help, and also more recently Get On Up. And that's who I went into the marketplace with. And networks called and said, why aren't you pitching In the Heat of the Night? Because I did it in the 80s at NBC. And I said, we want to live in a cable world. And they said, well, we want to live in a cable world too. And I said, really? Our title song comes from Nina Simone, Mississippi Goddamn. And the first fight we're going to have is you're going to say, well, how about Mississippi, shucks? Yeah, so we wouldn't pitch it at network, and ultimately Showtime embraced it. Actually, many buyers did. So I think that answers what is it about, and that's the critical litmus test for me.
Yeah, I want to pitch you something for you. I think you should. Are you familiar with Carl Hyacin?
No.
Look up the name. He's a wonderful writer in Miami, and I think in some ways it'd be great for you because he's almost, to my taste, better than Elmore Leonard.
Wow.
And he's brilliant. He's brilliant, and he's never. And I, having done this and going into the heat of the night, I think the characters that he creates, I think you would love it. And by the way, one of his first books that I ever read, called Skin Tight, is where a plastic surgeon kills somebody doing a nose job, and ends up putting them through a wood chipper. So there's your connection. But he's written a lot of best-selling books. But other questions? Yes.
Hi, my name is Valerie. I'm from Ottawa, in Canada.
The Canadian.
Yeah, I'm the token Canadian in the class.
Yeah.
And I had another question kind of related to pitching, I guess, because I know in your last answer you mentioned going to MGM and FX and saying, I want to develop this property. I was just wondering how did that go? Like how do you approach that situation of developing such an iconic film against kind of the, I guess when you mentioned that critics were kind of like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
How do you approach that?
When in 1997, when I was still at NBC, Bruce Paltrow came in and pitched to me doing Fargo, and I was like, the movie had come out in '96. I was blown away by the film, and I was like, okay, sure, that's a piece of development. We can do that. Robert Palm wrote the script. And then I had to make a decision as to whether I was making it. They had also given me a snow globe that was used for the distribution, and it was Marge out in the snowy tundra, and she's bent over the car that's flipped over, and she's looking at the blood in the snow. And I love that snow globe. At the end of the day, I passed, and I didn't make the pilot because I felt that we would disappoint the audience. we would not get Frances to play the role, of course. She won an Oscar. And so I just said, you know what, we're going to be chasing something. This is network television. We're not going to be able to give the audience what they got in that film. And so I passed. 1 year later, CBS piloted it, and they did it with Edie Falco was Marge. Kathy Bates directed it, and it was a busted pilot and never went anywhere. I've never seen it. And the great news is that Fargo had never gone into the television universe and failed as a watered-down version of Fargo. So I always keep that snow globe close to my desk. And 4 or 5 years ago, I'm looking at that snow globe, and I was like, holy shit, it's time. It's like, wow, it's right there. And so I went to MGM, and they were just gearing up in television. The company had been bought and sold a number of times. They had started to gear up in features, and it took forever, literally, for MGM even to like have television executives. And Noah and I were under a contract at ABC Studios, and it just looked like it wasn't going to work. Then Noah got out of his contract. I ended my contract, and I went back and I said, okay, what about? Hey, let's do Fargo. And they really respected Noah's vision. And when we went in to see Steve Stark and Max Bisbee at MGM, they jumped out of their chairs. They just said, this is brilliant. We said, this is an anthology. You know, we're going to break all these rules. And they, without fear, embraced that. And we went to FX, and they did as well.
Warren, if you hire Valerie, you got Canadian content right there. But I'm not letting her go. But Samantha?
Yes. Hi, Samantha Felness from Virginia. I just want to go back to Heat of the Night because something about race relations and stuff, and it's been a heated topic in recent months, and especially since the Oscars came out. One of the biggest editorial comments is, where is the diversity? Where is the black story? Where is Selma? Because it only got 2 nominations. Where are the female-driven movies and that kind of stuff? And yet, Fargo is somewhat of a feminist-driven thing, with Molly or Marge taking on the case and standing up to the men back at the police division. So I'm curious what brings you to doing something like that and heightening the diversity of characters and main characters that are not necessarily the straight white man.
Yeah. Well, I always have found in my career that, you know, a lot of television is the sincerest form of flattery is imitation. The biggest upside is when you cut against the grain and you find something that is not on. And I think what we tapped into with Fargo is something that was not in the television universe. A lot of people are trying to find that, and we'll see how well they do. When I screened in the Heat of the Night, first of all, I said, oh, well, I'd be shooting in a warm environment. That might be nice. And I was really struck by the power of the motion picture, by its thematic, and that television, as you said, is absolutely ignoring the fact that there's been virtually no growth in race relations in 50 years. And so we have a character in Virgil Tibbs that we just say we're inspired by the film, and we really don't pay attention to the television series that was done in the 80s. But we're inspired by this film, and we discover Virgil today. When we first meet him, he's in Washington, D.C., but we very quickly have him as a self-loathing black man who fled Mississippi because his marriage is to a white woman, and they were literally driven out of the state. There are tremendous issues with the family, and like Tate Taylor, who is a gay man who grew up in Mississippi and fled. Ultimately, when he did the help, he was pulled back to his home state and realized that there were a lot of flaws, a lot of things that were wrong with Mississippi, and also a lot of things that he really loved. In Mississippi, they're down to one abortion clinic in Jackson, and they are aggressively trying to close that down. We have a hotbed of politics between a Democratic Party that has not had power and strength since Lyndon Johnson, and a lot of uber conservatives. And we just go right into the heart of that world and try and illuminate with a very diverse cast, and I think some very, very strong men and women where we are today. And so far, our partners at Showtime seem to be entering that world without fear. And that's really very exciting to me. And hopefully that's a little bit of an answer to your question.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I think you're standing in front of
Can
me.
you?
Norman?
Yeah, you want? You're up.
Hi, I'm Bree Castellini, and so you were talking earlier about how you work really closely with writers, particularly now. So I was wondering, what are some kind of common disputes and arguments that you see in the writers' rooms that you're in? What are kind of the biggest issues you have to deal with just in the writers' room itself?
Lunch. You know, it's really there's a wonderful sense of you can go anywhere. The room is without rules, so a lot of crazy ideas get thrown out. You certainly want unpredictable twists and turns to the character and their journey, but not just for the sake of we're fucking with this journey. It's not capricious, and so what I think we ultimately try and sort through is, can we believe that? Are we being true to the character? And are we being true to the thematic of the show? And at the end of the day, that's what you have to go back to and say, we haven't lost that vision, we haven't lost that path, but wow, I didn't see it coming. And so it's spirited in how to find that path, and you know, there's no right or wrong. I think one of the things I had to learn as an executive at the network is, you know, I may have had a good idea, I may have had a good note, but it's just one way of doing it. And ultimately, it's got to be what works for the writer. And my best success was hiring people with a vision and getting out of their way and letting them exploit that vision. You know, Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David had no credentials whatsoever. They should not have been working in television. They found their way. They stumbled through, and what happened was brilliant. And our intelligence was realizing that they might just find it, and let them do that. Yeah, that's kind of the spirit of the room.
Yeah. Yes. Go ahead. Well, Warren, you be the judge of this, and you can say, okay, I'm out of here. But I know you have a production schedule. they'll keep you here forever, but we'll limit it. I don't want to. I know you've got work to do, so we have another question here, and
That's
please,
fine.
just be honest with me and say, I've had enough of these kids.
I know I love the kids. It's you, Norman.
Yeah, I heard that. Go ahead.
Hey, how are you? My name is Jamie Javtakis, and I was just wondering, this is another pitching question. As a producer, do you find that like a mini-series or a 10, 12 episode series for a premium channel or like an online outlet would be more appealing to you in like today's age of television? Like having a succinct idea for an entire series as opposed to just a pilot episode idea?
Well, first of all, in a pitch, you're not selling a pilot. You're selling a series. And so there's an entire process where there's the approval of the pilot story and there's the pilot outline and all of that stuff, like you'll get to that if they want to go forward. What you want to sell is character and journey. You're selling a series. For me, it's whether it's and In the Heat of the Night is not a limited series, it's a series. You know, and it'll go as long as it's meant to go. Fargo is, as you know, anthological, so all new characters and all new story, and this year we're in 1979, so that works differently as an anthology. I just want to attach myself to things that are good, that are really good, with a writer that has a vision, and I'm interested in doing something that is a great 8 hours, and that's it. The interesting thing about the marketplace is that we live in a world of choice. Amazing, amazing choices for the viewers. And so there are over 60 companies that are financing and putting on product. So that's pretty amazing. And so I think what I want to find is, what do I love? What am I excited about? But with all the competition, what helps break through? So most things that get bought, there's some pre-sold aspect to it. Fargo is out there in the universe. And so that really helped because we had the right vision with something that FX was like, we can sell that. True Detective, basically the agents at CAA said to their writer, you can't sell this. It's a cop show. We cannot sell it. We can't even set up a meeting for you to sell it. That's how dead trying to go into this marketplace for a cop show. And so his response was, fuck you, I'll write it. And so he wrote 2 episodes and a Bible. And then they were like, wow, this is really good. Then they packaged it. They went to Matthew McConaughey and said, are you interested? And he said, I'm in. And then he went to Woody and said, you got to do this with me. And so they went into the marketplace, not with a big idea, but with such an undeniable package that everybody wanted it. So a big book, a compelling idea, something that can break through the clutter, that is important. In the Heat of the Night, a title that people know and a desire to say, no one's doing that on television, and then having the elements that answer that one. You know, I have something that I'm doing with a German filmmaker, and it's a crime saga that I think is quite unique. But I'm going to go out into the marketplace with multiple scripts, a Bible, and a big, big feature film director and that's the way we'll go out, because the fourth nail doesn't resonate in the world until I come in with that package and say, here's why it's compelling. And I think the material is phenomenal. And that's something I'll be going out with shortly.
I was going to ask you the other side of the question, which is there any scenario you could see yourself going back to broadcast television to do something?
Dear God, no.
I mean, and that's the. I mean, I think most people in this room don't watch any broadcast television. You look at somebody said to me the other day, "Hey, did you see Peaky Blinders? Have you seen that? I mean,
Yes.
it's phenomenal.
It is.
And but look, I don't want to. This has been so great and very spirited. And I'm not going to hold you any longer. I know you have a lot of work to do, and
Thank you.
I'm so grateful, Warren.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Look, I look, when you're not in front of the camera, Norman, I look at this group and I say, that's the future. And to me, that's very, very exciting. And I know that you inspire. And I will say, all of you, I promise you, you are far better to go into the world, to create and to succeed, far better than I was equipped to do it. And there are many, many reasons each and every day while someone will stomp on your idea, they will try and squish it, they will try and kill it. And your job as a writer, as a creator, and as a producer is to hold on to that dream and find a way through. It took me 4 years before I was making Fargo. And I knew it had the potential to be great, and it exceeded my expectations. Don't lose sight of that. And I look forward to working for you in the future.
All right, thank you.
Cheers. Thank you, Norman.
Bon voyage.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.